All right, we are recording. And I'll call this meeting to order, the Affordable Housing Commission of Old Lyme. It is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 at 5:08 p.m. This is a special meeting, and we have one agenda item tonight, which is just an open planning session for our upcoming 830J Affordable Housing Plan. And then we will adjourn and reconvene at 6 p.m. for our regularly scheduled regular meeting with a separate agenda. So with that, thanks everybody for joining for this special meeting. We've been trying to get this planning session together for several weeks, and now we have. I sent out a packet of just some draft materials for discussion. I thought maybe we would start. I'll just walk through what they are. We won't dig into the content deeply, but I'll just walk through them, and then we can circle back and start to discuss them and add to them and change them as we go through our discussion. So let me start with the last document I sent out, which was the timeline. And this is an update from the timeline that we discussed when we were talking about the RFP. I'll get into the status of the RFP in our regular meeting, but just as a quick preview, it's just about ready to post. It will be posted this week. Final I's and T's dotted with insurance and legal and such. But the way that'll play out is we did approve the draft RFP. It's in near ready to post. Expect that to be done by the end of the week. So roughly on this timeline, we should be getting the responses in during November. By the end of November, we'll be able to have a public opening of the proposals, select a consultant during the month of December, and then have a consultant on board for January at least through the adoption deadline of June 1st, 2022. So on the upper part of that chart is more of the phases of the planning and the communication, and just again working left to right. Right now we're in an introductory phase where we've set up a website. We've had some initial outreach to some of our partners in the town, and one session with the adult forum at a First Congregational. I've actually gotten an invitation for St. Anne's as well. One of my neighbors is active there. So we'll get more into the comms plan, but between now and the holidays, essentially an introductory phase where we're going to get some basic information out there about what affordable housing is, why it's important for Old Lyme, and hopefully in the process dispelling some of the misperceptions and myths that are out there. I expect we'll take some time off during the holidays, and people will be busy, and we'll keep working at least around the holidays, but it may not be the best time to engage the public because they'll be thinking about other things. And then with a consultant on board, jump into a more rigorous community engagement plan in January after the holidays, where we go through a discussion phase where we'll be getting input from the community and incorporating that into our ongoing planning. So the planning goes on right through this. Finalizing the plan in the March-April timeframe, and then overlapping April to May, put ourselves in a position to go for adoption of the plan in time for the deadline. One thing I learned in going through the most recent incarnation of 830J, which was incorporated into this Public Act 2129 that was passed into law just in June. In addition to moving the deadline up a month to June 1st, I saw in there that if we intend to hold a public hearing on the plan, which is optional, but if we do, we'll need to have a final draft plan posted for that public hearing 35 days in advance. So that basically puts our timeline for having a final draft plan, 830J plan, ready for posting and publication by the middle of March, if we stay on this timeline. So we can circle back on this and see if we need to make any changes or if this makes sense. But the next thing I had put out was just some discussion notes on the plan, and that is the 4-page PowerPoint. I'm just pulling that up from.
Can I just ask a quick question, Michael?
Shoot.
On the public hearing, 35 days, is that 35 days to post our, like, what we're considering our final draft for the public hearing? Or 35 days in advance of whatever date we pick for the public hearing, or 35 days in advance of June 1st?
35 days in advance to whatever date we pick for the public hearing. So I think that was the second thing you said.
Yeah, okay.
So that puts us around March 15th if we want to go for a mid-April public hearing and keep us on track to give us a few weeks to get it adopted and incorporate any input from the public hearing.
Gotcha, thank you.
So the timelines keep backing up on us.
They do. We need one more month in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's it's gone. So second thing I distributed was just the discussion notes, a few pages of PowerPoint. We'll circle back, but basically tried to capture all the forces that are shaping our thinking, and actually incorporate some of the thinking that we've heard from the Rivercog consultant on the regional plan. On the first page, second page is just laying out a proposed 3-pronged strategy to the short term, capitalizing on the short-term opportunities, establishing that environment in town that's conducive to affordable housing development, and then pulling those together into creating opportunities for the future. And then on the last page of that, looking at finding a seam between the projects that may be too big for us to contemplate because of infrastructure limitations and the ones that might be too small to really make a difference over the long term. Taking perhaps a Goldilocks approach on that. So again, we'll go back through this. And then the third thing I sent out was the communications plan draft. And there's a lot of gaps in this, but again, trying to zero in on what we're going to need to do for the community engagement part of this. And this is shaping up more as a date-driven project plan and an initial stab at identifying who our stakeholders are in addition to the general public. So those are the discussion drafts for the next 45 minutes or so. So everybody has that, and if you don't have it, let me know. I'll shoot it out to you, and if not, why don't we loop back and open the discussion up with the planning timeline.
Yeah, I think the planning horizon sounds good. It is what it is. We're just backing into a date, so I think that's what we have to do. And maybe we should put maybe even a week of contingency, on that back end too, just in case. So I think that looks really good.
Yeah, working back, if we go for adoption, that'll be with the Board of Selectmen. We can always call a special meeting, but the Board of Selectmen meet on, I think, the first and third Mondays of the month. So if we target that first one, that'll give us 2 shots in April. So if we're ready for the first meeting, that'll give us another shot without a special meeting in April and still make that June 1st deadline. And there'll be some incentive there, because if we don't make the deadline, the selectman's going to have to write a letter to Department of Housing to explain why we didn't. So
that works. Okay. All right. Good. So I don't have any more comments on that. Otherwise, other than it's might have a few additional changes as we go, but I think it looks great.
Karen, anything?
No, I think it looks great.
Thanks. John, have you been able to join us?
I have.
Very good.
And I liked that looked great, actually, when I looked at it. I'm driving everybody, so I'll mute you and log in and out until I find a place to park.
Very good. And George?
But the only thing I was questioning is in terms of selecting the person or the company to do the actual consulting. Do we have any idea what these companies usually require in terms of the amount of time they need in order to develop a complete plan? I think we're assuming that if we fit them into this schedule, that they can drop the plan on us by March. I'm just wondering if that's a normal amount of time that we're giving them. It looks to be about 5 months.
Yeah, my experience with consultants, I haven't done it in affordable housing, but my experience with consultants, George, is a qualified consultant that submits a proposal is going to be nearly ready to go because they've done it before. And I can see from looking out across the other towns that have been doing plans that there are a few consulting firms that seem to be active in this space. So I can't say for sure, but my expectation would be that they aren't going to need more than a couple of weeks to get out of the gates and start helping us.
I guess I was just trying to think back in my mind if in the RFP we actually stated when our expectation was that they would drop the plan for us or initial draft.
We did.
Okay, thank you. That was basically my question.
Yeah, and because we're gonna be most likely paying them by the hour, they're not gonna like come on January 4th and then work all the way through June 1st. They're gonna, they're gonna just give us a rate per hour that they freelance it basically throughout that. And then remember, facilitation of some public sessions is in there as well. So I think it'll work out, George, where we get the proposals and we can kind of get a feel for what they're thinking it's going to take them to get up to speed, themselves. And hopefully we'll have one of those firms that's already up to speed on this topic. And then, draft up some materials for us that won't be too different from probably things that they've already done. And then a communications plan is pretty standard as far as, the number of hours that they need to put in to prepare materials for such a thing. So I think it'll work out, but it will be interesting to see what comes back in November for sure. And George, your mic is a little bit low. I don't know if you could just get a little closer to the mic because it's very hard to hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have to make sure we have a maximum do not exceed in our bid.
I don't know if it was just me, John, but I
better?
couldn't understand what you said.
I said we want to make sure we have a maximum do not exceed within our bid. So in other words, we get a product because we only have a finite amount of money with our budget. So we want to make sure that it encapsulates what we need at the end of the day.
Yep, and we do have a
lot of times I know, but when you work with consultants, and I work with them a lot, they always go back to the well. So when we need to be very clear when we're hiring these people,
Understood.
especially if we're going to have them hourly.
Okay. So what we can do, if that timeline is at least a reasonable starting point, we can dig in a little bit on the actual plan. So let's go to that PowerPoint, couple of pages. And again, on the first page there, this being a draft, nowhere near set in stone, just a starting point for our discussion. What I try to do is lay out some of the, not necessarily they're not all about barriers per se, but some of the forces that are going to have to shape our thinking on as we come to something that's actually doable for our town. And right up at the top of those is the resource and infrastructure limitations. So that's essentially the available land, that is both undeveloped and buildable. And we've seen that at least we need to do more work on this, but at least on the basis of deeds, the about 93% of the properties in Oline that isn't by acreage, that's just by deed, are already taken. So it leaves 7% available. We have very limited public drinking water and very limited public sewer, and even the new sewer that's going in is, because it's funded by the Clean Water Act, is going to have some limitations on how it can be used for new development. So that's well known, and that came through in our committee work over the last year. Also, no news here is the environmental sensitivity of Old Lyme. We've got the coast, we have the river, the estuaries, as well as inland wetlands. So there's a lot of water considerations. We have the geology in town, which means that we're going to run into ledge, and it's going to challenge again waste treatment, even septic waste treatment, if not sewers. And out there, I think our planning horizon is going to be long enough so that we're going to at least have to think about climate change as a force at work in any development, not just affordable housing development. Third box there is the demographic trends, and we certainly got an eye-opening presentation on that from Don Poland during the RiverCog session. No real news there in that there's increasing senior population that's been going on for a long time and has already been projected in the last census to be continuing for decades. What caught me a little bit off guard was it's not just the fraction of the senior population isn't just because of the graying, but there's an active decrease in the young population and the overall population. We knew the overall population was decreasing, but the shrinkage in the younger population was, to me at least, it was pretty striking. And also, I think you heard in there that there's an increasing number of single person households, which I think in the case of affordable housing is going to want to influence our thinking about what housing diversity looks like. Policy and regulatory factors. We have limited multifamily, excessive accessory uses are restricted. There's few incentives. So that's enumerating a few of the things that aren't what the dominant development pattern is in town, which is detached single family. So policy and regulatory, and there are also a few incentives. So although they're non-zero, there are a few incentives, but they are few in number for affordable housing. But policy and regulatory changes are going to need to be a factor. And finally, this came up again during our committee work over the last year, and that's the post-pandemic. So there's been a shift in what work and home and commute means with all the virtual work that's being done. It doesn't affect everybody, but there has been a shift. There's certainly been a recent pattern of a shift from urban to rural. It's been showing up as increased demand, lowered inventory, increasing prices right here in town, which sums up to increase the market headwinds for affordable housing. It's market is good for market housing, which would it's going to mean it'll be more challenging to find developers that are interested in creating affordable housing. So I could pause there and say, anything that is missing there, anything you'd like to discuss or challenge on what those forces at work are?
This is Jen. I had on the resource and infrastructure. I was thinking that the limitation also might be not just the buildable available land per se, like a lot, but maybe it's I don't know if this is a foreshaping it or this is maybe something we can strive to do in our plan, is to increase the availability of houses that might need rebuilding that we could take over, like for instance, that New London is doing. So not that we would, foreclose on anybody, but if there's a foreclosing property or a property that's I think we used to call it blight in previous things. So a blighted property, would the town at some point be able to maybe buy that property, at whatever that value is then, and then turn that into affordable housing? So I don't know how to capture that necessarily in a bullet point, but
All right, we've been calling that blighted or distressed. And actually, Jen, I tried to catch that on the right side of this, which is more the response.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which way it should go, but there's a lack of that right now, and then so we definitely should plan for maybe trying to have some mechanism in place in our plan for how the housing committee or the board of selectmen or whoever this is that is running this, can convert that, if you will.
Exactly. I tried to capture that in the second box on the right, first bullet, which is redevelopment versus new development. And that would be reuse. So exactly what you described, whether it was anything that could be converted that was basically goes in the same infrastructure footprint at what was there before, and whether that's distressed or blighted or just someone who wants to divest of a property that's market rate and convert it. That would be the redevelopment. But we could call that out. It's called out again more specifically in the third slide, but definitely want to completely agree. We want to capture that as a response to the.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we could find a different word for redevelopment or something. I'm not really sure that's like right top of mind for somebody. If I say redevelopment, I'm not really sure what that means. You know what I mean? So maybe
redevelopment of what?
Yeah, in the non-affordable housing world, I'm not really sure if people know that right off the top of their head. So that's just a minor point, but I think it looks good. I don't have any comments on the left-hand side other than that.
Karen?
No, I think it looks really good. I just think I kind of want to bring up something when Don Poland was talking in that meeting, is that I feel like the pandemic has really changed the way we're going to view the towns in which we consider living. Since many people are working remotely and will stay remote, where you live doesn't matter as much as it used to.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And actually, when I had the preview of this, I had asked Don about that. So I said, the anecdotal evidence is that people are doing more virtual work. They're working at home. And I asked him if they thought that the decoupling of commute to the housing market. So they were basically asserting in that presentation that your commute distance was pretty much a linear relationship with housing costs and
Right.
housing market.
Right.
And I asked him, how badly was that broken and how long would it be broken and what did they think? And he basically said they don't know because it's ongoing.
Right.
But I think we definitely want to capture that as something to track. The other thing that came up, I don't know if it came up in the, I can't remember if it came up in the general session, was this notion of that in the post-pandemic world and the shift to the more rural communities, that amenities would become more important. So being able to go out to a restaurant or have entertainment in town. And I asked him then, I said, again, this is anecdotal, but you read and hear about people who are coming here and they want to be outside. They want to use the parks and the beaches and specifically not be in a crowded restaurant or a crowded theater.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I asked you, do you see that as something that's going to recover as we come out of the pandemic, assuming there's not another one on its heels, or is that something that's, a shift that we need to think about over a longer time horizon? Again, remains to be seen, but I think we want to leave a placeholder for that.
How would you suggest that we capture that information about people that are working remotely as opposed to returning to the office? How could we track that?
I haven't seen any hard statistics yet, but that's something we could dig for. I'm seeing more of the anecdotal reports in the press.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here, Karen. I think so. Desegregate CT, which is a statewide grassroots effort, I would say. It's really sponsored by Yale, but it's a grassroots effort to have those, commuter towns, if you will, have more accessory dwelling unit provisions, more multifamily dwellings. So you're right there on the commuter line, and they've been pushing that for the last year, actually. And so they're very close to proposing in the 2020 in this short session that's coming up in the legislature for a couple of things. And one of them, is that the ADUs, across the board, everybody are free to have ADUs, and the multifamily zoning issues in towns, especially those, or maybe only those, we're not sure, by a commuter hub. And they've defined those in their own words, what that is. But they have not yet kind of tracked the, and this is a very large organization. They haven't really tracked or put out any information about the effect of the pandemic on what their proposal was last April, because this is when kind of this started. So they may be hitting a little bit of a roadblock there, but that may generate, somebody to get that information, so maybe that will come out shortly.
I just have to say that I think that the reliance on transportation or commuter hubs might not have the same value as it did prior to the pandemic.
Yeah. And
I
it never
agree.
really did for us anyways in Old Lyme, not really, not like Old Saybrook or New London, so we were always kind of like on the towns that were revising their zoning and planning and plans, but not necessarily one that they were concentrating on. They were really concentrating on the Metro North stops, and the Amtrak stops. So,
but on the flip side of that is that because people may not be commuting, the fact that we don't have public transportation may not be a burden.
correct.
In fact, when you couple that with the outdoor amenities we have, and the more,
Right.
it could actually be converted into not a liability, it could be converted into an asset.
Mm-hmm.
I should have waited to sell my house.
Although you listen to some other parts of that, and maybe you did that presentation, and maybe your timing was really good, Jen.
But anyhow, that's just my thought. I totally agree with you. It might be like a piece that we need to just asterisk and follow up on over the next couple of months. And I'll look in where I read things about habitat and everything else, and see if I can get a trend or some information out there, because definitely, like Michael said, there's a lot of press talking about it, but there's no real projections as far as data goes. There are people saying like they may never return, to work, or company X decided they can always work remote, that kind of thing. Like Google, for instance, I think Google is letting people work remote as long as they want now. And
We're
that's
permanent remote. We had to make a decision whether we were going to be permanent work from home or permanent work in the office.
Yeah, so it should be coming out pretty soon that who has made those decisions about permanent or part-time or whatever, because somebody has to make decisions on these major real estate investments, like in New York City. Yeah, my nephew works for Ernst & Young in Brooklyn, and he hasn't been in the office since he started there. And they had given him, it was supposed to be September, and now it's January, and then they don't even know. And it's a brand new building. Yeah, so a lot of issues.
So there will still be a lot of jobs in the service industry, and that will still be hands-on and go to work, commute and go to work.
John, what do you see in New York?
But it'll shift. The office workers, I think it's something I'm not sure we're going to be able, on the timeline we're on for next, May, June, be able to have a concrete plan for it. But I to your point, Jen, I think, and to yours, Karen, there definitely needs to be at least a placeholder in that we track this. Because I don't know, I can't believe it's going to, even if it comes back, I don't think it's going to come all the way back.
I agree.
Just a thought. I wonder what do you guys think if that means, so let's just say you're moving here from New York to escape the city and put your kids in a school that's open, and you can now work remotely from home. would you necessarily be looking for affordable housing? So those are the type of jobs, versus the type of jobs that we'd be more targeted towards, which are local providers of services versus, investment bankers or whatever. So, it may not, there might be like a little triage of levels that you have to go through to get to what are the types of jobs that are moving out of New York and Massachusetts, whatever, to Connecticut. And it may not be the, housing services, housekeeping services, the landscaping, the firemen, the policemen, the teachers. It may be those that can afford $750,000 houses. So,
Although if you think about, EV is going to be growing, an entry level engineer might actually,
yes.
if you add up things like EV's growing, entry level engineers, they may be working virtually, and you add that with what looks like a real trend towards single person households, that's something that would, that might want to influence our thinking. And it gets back to the ADUs and the rentals, the 0 to 2 bedroom stuff rather than the bigger 3 bedroom. But again, we're not going to solve it tonight, but if that's one of the, if we're agree that's one of the forces we need to think about and consider, then.
I was thinking that's one of the things that Desegregate Connecticut pointed out last week as well, was that, they're really not for single family dwellings. They would rather have, a clustered dwelling or a multifamily or, something like that, like an ADU, for both the footprint for the environment as well as, the commutability and things like that. So, and the affordability. So those are things like we just need to probably keep that in the back of your head to say that, this is what the proponents of that group, are saying versus what affordable housing proponents are saying, versus what we see in Old Lyme, which is, maybe a mix of both of those things. But if we could, like, that's a great example for EB. I mean, we could be like, who wouldn't want to live in Old Lyme if you work in Groton, and so, and if you're making, your entry level $57,000 a year, and you probably do have a family or, at least one child, then that's a great target audience, if you will.
Yep. Okay. You just go back and I'm bouncing between screens here, so bear with me. All right, so on the right side of that, tries again to just come up with some of the responses and some of the thinking that might result. So building for the future, because things are clearly in flux. We're not sure where they're headed, but they are changing. Efficient use of land and water. This we'll expand on that, Jen. Great point on using the existing infrastructure footprint rather than depending on new land and new sources of water and waste treatment. On the third slide, there's this more of the accessory and missing middle approaches that tries to get between very large multifamily and the one-offs. Something that's come up, and I know Jen, you and I have talked about this, and it's come up again since in a few contexts, is this notion of advanced septic technology, where there are newer approaches for on-site waste treatment that look like they're useful in reducing the need for community sewer systems. And again, this is anecdotal, but it seems like Connecticut might not be at the leading edge of adopting some of these technologies. I've seen it on Long Island and Massachusetts, but less so in Connecticut. So I kind of had at least an asterisk in my head for, we need to look into this more. And actually that emphasizes something that's also on this page, which is the collaborative effort of nature of what we do. So we need to be working with economic development. We need to be working with the land use folks and the planning commission and the zoning commission as we go through this, because it's not just affordable housing, but a lot of the factors we're identifying affects our plan of conservation and development and our zoning regulations for market rate as well as affordable.
Hey, Mike, I think I mentioned to you that one of my thoughts was along 156 down by the shore where they are putting in sewers. There's been a lot of talk with the elections and everything about blighted areas, commercial development, and maybe repurposing some of the buildings along that corridor. Might that be an opportunity to inject affordable housing into that conversation? And again, I think we alluded maybe in, if my memory serves me correct, about what went on in Stonington with them turning down, the town actually turning down the proposed building of a very large complex in a redevelopment area.
Yeah, two things on that, George. So definitely on the 156 corridor. And my understanding is that the Economic Development Commission is going to be firing up a project to be looking at that 156 corridor. And we'll definitely want to be a participant in that discussion. So yes. Complication there. This is one of the areas where the sewer that's going in is funded by the Clean Water Act. And my understanding is there are some restrictions on what you can use that for. And that I don't necessarily see that as a hard barrier, but that may be something to note. And there may be some lobbying to be done at the state level, even to change some of the regulations about how CWA funded sewer is used. And that's going to be complicated. I don't know if you also saw there's new deals, there's renewed agreements between East Lyme, Waterford, and New London on capacity. So, but that's definitely, I think 156 corridor is as we go through this planning process over the next few months, we're going to need to take a hard look at that. And that referendum in Stonington, they didn't turn down the whole project. What they did was turned back a tax abatement for the project that was at Campbell Grain, where they're putting in like 80 odd units. So it was a setback, not a full setback, in that they didn't. The project is still approved. What they reversed was the approval for a tax abatement, which is going to make it tougher for them to get funding. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But that's in a spot where they do have the infrastructure.
I mean, Stonington's a great example. Maybe, I don't know if they have a draft plan or what they're doing, but I think, George, a lot of things that Stonington does is kind of the same temperament in the town, I would say, and the same environmental concerns and the same open space concerns, it seems to me, anyways, from at least North Stonington, if not Stonington itself. But
And Stonington is interesting. We used to live in Pawcatuck, and Pawcatuck and Stonington are they're in the same town, but they're two different communities. And what Stonington has been able to do, based on my reading of their draft plan, is really smartly, I think, is to take advantage of the Route 2 corridor they have on the east end of town in Pawcatuck, where there is infrastructure, and also take advantage of the Seaport corridor on, heck, I forget the route name there, but also where it's already pretty well developed and there's commercial and there's infrastructure. So they basically focused all of their planning on those two areas, and they've been able to essentially not have to worry about the balance of their town that has that, limited availability, environmental sensitivity, zoning regulations that are oriented towards detached single family. So they have some nascent opportunities there, and it looks like, based on their draft plan, that they're able to take advantage of them. We don't have that here, but maybe we can create it.
okay, good points, George.
But we definitely want to track that 156 thing and probably reach out to the Economic Development Commission, as it's my understanding is it's relatively early phases, but it's something we're going to want to be, again, I think it's a discussion we're going to want to be part of.
Would that be something, Michael, is that something that would be as far as the plan goes, our 830J plan goes, is that something that just is like a bullet point, or I'm not quite sure how this plan's going to look in the final version, but is it recommendations, or it's just we're going to work with the EDC to facilitate, discussions about, I'm wondering how specific we need to be in the plan. That's just a thought that just came to me based on this conversation, but we don't need to solve it now. I was just wondering how much detail we need to put into this plan, or it just needs to be a plan that we're gonna, a strategy, like what we're looking at right now on this PowerPoint slide, like this is, leading us towards a strategy and challenges and obstacles that we might have to overcome, and the benefits that we're going to get from overcoming them, and what that might lead to look like for an 830J, down the road 5-year outcome for affordable housing in Old Lyme. Or does it need to be like, we're going to look at 156 Corner, we're going to look at Rogers Lake, we're going to look at Bill Hill Road, whatever. Does it need to be that specific?
I think that if you look at the Plan of Conservation and Development and other towns' POCDs, and I've looked at some of the affordable housing plans that have come out, and it makes sense that in addition to what you said, which is basically understanding what the backdrop is, what are you working with, what's your strategy going to be at a high level? So we're going to focus on this and we're not going to focus on that. And then at the end of them, generally, there's that strategy is instantiated into an action plan where there are specific things called out and there are people assigned to look at them. And they aren't always do this or build this. A lot of times it's consider this or explore this. But yeah, I would expect that in the final phases of our planning, once we settle on where we want to focus, we're going to want to also identify a list of things to do over the coming years and who's going to do them and what kind of time frame and what the work product would look like. So yeah, not necessarily all the way to a project plan where the beginning and the middle and the end are agreed and it's goes into execution mode, although there may be some of those. But I would see that coming out in some next level planning, like 156, for example, and also potentially some regulatory changes we want to suggest going down. So does that make sense?
Yeah. I was just thinking, from the just do it perspective to the next level to the, planning for the future level. So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Sorry, I derailed you a little bit there.
Not at all. That's why we're here, is to just kind of frame this out so that we can actually start making some progress towards getting to a draft on March 15th, All right, we don't have that much time left, but let's look at the slide 3 in that deck, which is just a proposal that we go for a 3-pronged strategy. One is, and this gets to your last point, Jen, this is stuff we're going to do. So capitalize on existing short-term opportunities like McCulloch and like ARPA, and we'll talk about those next session. The second is to create that environment where it's more conducive to affordable housing development, and that gets at the engaged community and town government. The existence of our commission that was brought into existence this year is a good start. A network of funding and development partnerships, and some of those policy and regulatory changes that can lower the barriers and hopefully add some incentives. And then the third prong of the strategy is to actually building on that environment to create opportunities for more efficient and high impact development. And then the last slide zooms in on that third prong. And what I try to do here is just pull together some of the discussions we've had and in talking about where do we focus broadly, with the notion that the one-off single family and set aside developments that have a minimum number of affordable housing units to qualify as being affordable, maybe too small when you think about the and too low impact when you think about the buildable land limitation. We're not going to make a lot of progress with those. You go to the other side and you think about the very large multifamily developments, like the one that we were just talking about in Pawcatuck, that will require public water and sewer, might be too big. And for those two, that doesn't necessarily exclude them, but you take a more opportunistic approach on those. And then possibly the Goldilocks approach being that going for redevelopment of existing distressed or commercial divestitures, the accessory units that basically go within an existing housing unit, small duplex, triplex, quadplex, and small scale multifamily and clusters and high set aside developments that actually put more units on a smaller infrastructure and land footprint would be where we'd focus the strategy. And what that would carry with it is focusing the regulatory changes and the incentives to enable them. So that's really a concept right now, but if that's something we'll need to talk about more. We're not going to have time to really flesh it out, but that would get to the second thing you were talking about, Jen, where we describe what we're up against, come up with a strategy for approaching it, and then advance that into the things that we're actually going to try to do.
Yeah, I mean, I like the three-pronged strategy. I think that works really well. And that's going to just, I mean, it's so clear and precise, and I mean, you can't really argue with it. So I like that. And I think the Goldilocks approach kind of puts an image into people's mind, about it. It's actually really good for a communications, thing. Because like when Tim first met with us way back, I think in May it was, and he's like, onesies, twosies aren't going to cut it. We need something more than that. And I remember him saying that just because he used the word onesie, twosies, but it was, he's right. It's like, you can't just have these two McCulloch properties and be like, victory, we're not. So I think that approach is good, and our limitations are limitations. I was looking at again, Desegregate Connecticut, or this, I guess it was the CT Mirror had an article about the tax credits that nonprofits received. It was like $11 million or something in tax credits that nonprofits received for affordable housing just a few months ago. And the East Lyme project, Karen, the one there on the border, they received $500,000 for their, I think it was 56 affordable units, or maybe it was 65, I forget, affordable units there. And, like we didn't apply for anything, obviously, but, there are things out there that can spur development of some of these projects, and it did list all of the developers of the people that got these grants, or they were tax credits. And so maybe like it might behoove us at some point to contact some of these developers and say, like, would you ever consider Old Lyme? Like, what would it take, to get you in, and that kind of thing. So, and that's right on the border. I mean, this is like, this development in East Lyme is right on the border of Old Lyme and East Lyme, like the line it goes right there. So it's not like they have sewers and we don't, they have capacity and we don't. Somehow they're building this multi, unit complex right there by Rocky Neck State Park. So maybe they have the infrastructure and we don't. They're tied into the New London sewers probably, but just maybe something that we want to explore a little further as we develop it, and I personally would really want to reach out to developers, and I think I told you this before, lawyers and of these people that develop these things, and get their perspective about why they won't touch Old Lyme, or why Old Lyme might be feasible for them, or why it's not feasible for them, that kind of thing. So it's just another angle to explore.
Well, Jen, one thing in reading the Stonington plan that Poland did, one of the things that struck me is a lot of it is aspirational, like what aspirationally do we want to do in town? But a lot of it also kind of stuck a little, fork in the butt of some of the thornier issues that we know we're going to run into when we talk about trying to get more than onesies twosies. And in here, that when they get into their actual plan, they discuss the zoning regulations. And I just read that Halls Road had a disagreement as to whether it was 2.5 stories or 3.5 stories, or whether it was going to be 3 or 4 stories. So if they're running into that issue, the kind of issues that were published in this Stonington report have to do with going into residential areas and discussing putting a 4-story multiple family housing unit in. Not talking about the acreage, but rather talking about the feasibility of building a multifamily structure in residentially zoned areas, and does the zoning need to be changed in order to achieve that goal? So a lot of these things might be thorny issues, but aspirationally, if you're going to try to reach your goal, you're going to have to push that envelope one way or the other, whether it's on Halls Road or a commercial district or a residential area, to support the kinds of multiple family building or rehab that you're talking about. It may require some creative thinking on zoning.
All good points, George.
I'm noting we're coming up at the top of the hour here, so we're going to need to adjourn and restart the regular meeting. But before we do, Karen, any thoughts? And John? I think John dropped off. It looks like John dropped off. Okay. This will certainly not be the last time we discuss this. I think we're going to have this be part of at least our monthly cadence, is to have one of these planning discussions. It's more open. So why don't we adjourn this, take a 2-minute break. I'm going to leave. We're going to continue right in the same video conference session. And then we'll reconvene in 2 or 3 minutes as the regular meeting. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Jen, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Karen, you want to second that? Okay. Karen signaled a second. All in favor? Signify. Aye. Very good. Okay. This meeting's adjourned. We're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break and then reconvene as the regular meeting for October.
If it keeps look like I'm wiggling around, it's because I am. I'm in a hotel room, basically on the beach with 5 teenagers. Here's my view. Hold on, can you see it?
I was muted. That looks nice, Jen. We're having some nice weather up here, but I'm guessing it's warmer where you are.
It's 88 today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
John Coughlin, you back online?
I certainly am.
Very good. Thanks, John. And there's Karen.
I had to go feed my dog. Thank goodness you stopped. He was whining. I was like, I hope you guys can't hear this. He was like, "Ooh."
Priorities. Okay, I'm not expecting Amy or Bill, so I think we're good to go. So I will call the meeting to order. This is the Town of Ode Lyme Affordable Housing Commission regular meeting, Wednesday, October 20th. It's 6:04. And with us, we have Jen Miller, Karen Winters, George Clow, John Coughlin on the phone, and myself, Michael Foliano. I didn't miss anybody. Okay. So we have some housekeeping to do. Backlogged a bit, but we'll run through that. This is a regular meeting. So unlike the special meeting we just adjourned, if we want to make modifications to this agenda, we can with a motion. I don't have any suggestions now, but if any arise, you may call that to our attention. So we're going to approve some minutes. There's correspondence on the agenda. I don't have any, but if anyone else does, we'll have the opportunity to discuss that. Our old business updates, which will probably take us a little time. Any other business coming up, we'll have our usual discussion about upcoming meetings and agenda items. We'll have an opportunity for public comment at this meeting, and then adjourn. So diving in to the approval of minutes. The first one is going to be for the meeting of August 18th. Now that's an interesting one because that was a meeting we attempted to have a regular meeting and the technology did not work for us. So the meeting was not called to order. And instead we rescheduled that as a special. And what I submitted for that was in lieu of minutes was just a notice that there was a technical problem. The meeting was not called to order and no business is done. Present at that were myself, Bill Beluzzi, Karen, and Jen. So to approve this, the 4 of us that were there will be able to vote on that. So for the purpose of discussion, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second, Jen.
Karen and Jen. Any discussion? Okay, in favor?
Right.
And I'll join that. Very good. Approved. So voting on that, George, you weren't at that, so voting on this were myself, Karen, and Jen. Okay, We'll get in some real minutes, which was the special meeting of August 30th. Pull those up. And present at that meeting were Bill Beluzzi, myself, Amy, who was seated as a voting member, Jen, and Karen. So again, I'll entertain a motion to approve these minutes.
I'll go first. I'll make a motion to approve August 30th.
A second?
It's up to
I'll
you,
second.
Karen.
Okay, Karen, good. We can just flip through these on the way through. Okay, any discussion?
No, it looks good.
Okay, then. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Moving on to September 14th. Special meeting. Okay, present at this meeting were myself, Jen, John Coughlin, and Karen. So once again, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, John. Karen, was that a second? Very good. Any discussion?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, again, thank you. And finally, for our mini marathon, the special meeting of October 10th. I'm just looking for the minutes on that one.
Which is the one that we're looking at now, Michael?
I think it should be October 4th.
Oh, you're right. It should be October 4th. I made a mistake on the agenda. So I will entertain a motion to amend the agenda to approve the minutes from October 4th instead of October 10th.
I second.
Who made the motion original? Karen? Karen and Jen. Any discussion? Okay. This vote is to approve the change to the agenda to approve minutes of October 4th instead of October 10th and amend the agenda.
Motion.
We have the motion and second, John. So we're now voting.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Done. Okay, now I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the special meeting held on October 4th.
I'll make a motion. Jen?
Okay, Jen. Second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
2 seconds.
Gotta be quick around here, John.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor of approving the minutes for the special meeting on October 4th? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yay.
Very good. Thank you. Here we are. We'll have some filing to do with the town clerk. Actually, the way we do it, I don't have any more filing to do. This just goes in our minutes because of our meeting cadence to meet Freedom of Information Act requirements. We have to get our minutes in within 2 weeks, and we don't always meet within 2 weeks. So our minutes are initially filed as unapproved, and then we go through and capture in the next round of minutes any amendments to the unapproved minutes and the approval. So filing's already done, and this will be captured in the minutes of tonight's meeting. Okay, that gets us through agenda item 2. Number 3, correspondence. I have none to report. Is there any correspondence to report? Discuss?
None for me.
I have none.
Hearing none, then we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is updates. Okay, first up, the planning grant and the RFP. So the status of the RFP is it won't. Thanks, Jen, for that draft. I actually did review it with Tim Griswold, which resulted in another draft, and that went out to the insurance carrier. And then just for our information, the insurance carrier recommended that we go with the more detailed insurance specification in the requirements than the summary one.
Interesting.
So
I didn't think for that amount or that would be necessary, but that's interesting to know.
yep, that's why we have them, is to advise on those kinds of things. So that's been incorporated. Tim has sent it out also for a quick check from the from town council. We expect that back within a day. We'll incorporate anything, but he said he did not expect any more changes. The only thing we might want to do is with the RFP is we had originally capped the RFP at $9,000 for community engagement and held some in reserve for data analysis. But I'm thinking, based on the quality of work that we saw coming out of Rivercog for that housing needs analysis, we may be able to kick that up a little bit. And I just wanted to discuss that briefly and at least restore it to 10. And we may down the line have the opportunity to increase it again, but at least for the initial posting, increase the amount back up to 10. And any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think if we can do that, it would probably be a better number for people looking at it over that extended period of time where things may change and happen and we might throw additional work at them. So it's always good to have a little bit of contingency in there, like I think John was pointing out earlier. So,
Yep.
You know, if we could go back to 10, I think 10 would be a better number for me.
Maybe save us a trip to the well.
Yeah, I agree. 10's a good idea out of the rip.
Karen, any thought? Good. George?
Yeah, I think 10, it sounds like a better break point.
Okay, so I will make that change for the final version, and I expect it to be posted by the end of the week. So that would put us in a timeline, and I think we're okay. We've slipped a little bit from what we originally planned, but I still think when you look at having a consultant on board by first of the year, I think we're still on track for that.
Yeah, I think if you kind of break it down, like we were talking about earlier, John, about the hours. So if, let's just say 10,000 at, $100, you're looking at 100 hours. So,
Yeah, but there's going to be different level people who touch it.
it could be, but there's not going to be too many people, I don't think, on this project. It's either a principal and a junior.
You're probably a senior and a junior.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And then, so the point is, we don't tell them what their hourly rate is. Here's $10,000, make it work, and it's a maximum do not exceed. So therefore, they know the scope, and they have to deliver the scope. And it's not like, oh, we went over by, or this happened, that happened. It's they've got to get into it. Unless we make a material change, which we won't.
It's stated in there that it's a state grant, so that generally they know it's unchangeable. But I'm just saying it's a roughly 100 and something hours, 110, 100 hours.
Sure, like $100 an hour, but
It seems like we'll be able to get a meaningful amount of work done for that. So
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll press on,
Basically,
and I will keep you posted on the posting, and
That's good.
hopefully we're on track. Okay, anything else for the grant RFP?
No.
Did you want me to change anything on there, or are you going to take care of that?
I will. I've updated it since you last had it, so to avoid version control.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Craziness. We're good. All right, then regional housing plan. Guys should be pretty well up to speed on that. The The introductory meeting was held on October 12th, and we've since gotten the slides and the video from that, and it was an eye-opener. I don't think we can discuss that more now, but we probably want to just bring that into our planning discussions. I can tell you that we're also going to be meeting next week with the RiverCog team just to do a little more detailed planning on how our activities in community engagement and actually creating the 30J plan are going to dovetail with the regional plan. And that's going to be happening next Monday. So I'll report out on how that goes. Based on what I've seen from our timeline and the regional timeline, they're basically planning now to move into more of a community engagement phase and start the 830J and the regional plan, actually authoring it and writing it in the first quarter next year. So the timelines roughly match between what we're thinking and what they're thinking. And I think it'll be a good discussion to have on just who's going to do what and who's going to be on first for particularly our community engagement forums, which we had proposed that we will actually lead and drive from locally rather than have the regional folks come in and run the community engagement, and we'll incorporate any regional considerations into the community engagement plan that we run, and ditto for the 830J plan. So I'll report out on how that meeting goes. I expect it's gonna go well. There are really good folks up there at RiverCog, and we've got a good conversation going with them.
Do you think, Michael, you were previously concerned about their timeline, but do you think now they're kind of they're back on track? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're converging, not diverging, so that's a good thing. So that'll be going on right through. That'll be overlapping continuously with our community engagement and planning. And Amy and I have been going to the liaison meetings. The next liaison meeting, I don't think it's until late November or December. But we'll have that interim planning meeting just for us with RiverCog next week, and I'll report out on that. Okay. The open space opportunity. Thanks everybody for looking at that for the meeting we had last month to come up with our primary strategy for that, and for looking over the draft notes on it. I had a brief conversation with Amanda from Open Space, and I think we have something to work with here. So just talked about it in concept. The concept being that if the two building envelopes were the ownership was retained by the town and leased to owners of a structure that was built, an affordable structure that was built on the land, how would that work with recovering some of the costs, and the idea of having potentially some lease revenue be the vehicle through which the costs are recovered was of interest, and we're going to definitely have details to hammer out, but we're still talking, and Amanda's out of town right now, but I believe it's going to be on the agenda for the next Open Space Commission meeting. And I was thinking, if this works out, it would be really ideal if a proposal that went to the Board of Selectmen was a joint proposal from our Affordable Housing Commission and Open Space. That would make it pretty compelling. And I think we're at least on. We have a line of sight to making that happen, and I'm encouraged by it.
That's an excellent idea.
That's awesome.
So we still have some math to do and some details to be bedeviled by, but it's a good collaboration, and I'm encouraged. So it may slow down a little bit now while we have a conversation with open space in more detail, but I think it'll be a good investment in time. Any thoughts, questions, concerns?
Sounds like a good plan and all. So the fact is we both won't have to hit the selectmen separately. It'll be a joint effort and it'll be easier for them to approve.
Yeah.
Very good outcome.
So haven't quite got the outcome yet, but we have a target. I'm very encouraged.
Encouraging discussion.
Okay. There's more on that. If there's no more on that, we'll go to the Hope Partnership proposal. So where we left off was a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the board and the other departments use whatever administrative instruments they have available to them to resolve the tax abatements from previous years with Hope in the short term. I believe that discussion is still active, and they're still working towards that. It was on us to come up with a longer term proposal for how to engage and potentially address the proposal from Hope that the two properties that actually are adjacent to the McCulloch family open space be transferred to the town. I want to open this up for some discussion. My sense is we may want to wait a little bit and see what happens with the McCulloch, those two building envelopes on the McCulloch property, to see if that gives us anything to work with. I'd be reluctant to recommend a strategy now, especially since those properties all share the same right of way on that access road and are literally right next door. It may make sense to see where we get with the McCulloch family open space opportunity, and then potentially incorporate a recommendation for what to do with the Hope proposal into that. But I'll just leave that out there for discussion. Karen, thoughts?
Just for clarity, Michael, the letter for the tax abatement for the ongoing situation, that has not been resolved yet?
Has not yet been resolved to my knowledge, but I'll ping the Board of Selectmen on that.
Okay, yeah, that's unusual. That would seem like a no-brainer almost. So, all right, so yeah, then I think we have time to agree on the strategy going forward, and so we have time for the McCulloch property discussion to hedge into the Hope discussion. So, but I would be surprised if they denied a tax abatement for those two properties.
Yeah, I don't think the discussion is if, it's how.
Yeah, the process by which they need to do it legally. Yeah.
Yep.
Which seems to have been the question all along. So,
and in my research, what I did see is that as a backstop, there is a statute on the books that says that a town can pass an ordinance granting a tax abatement for affordable housing, which that is.
that would make sense. I mean, I would say that would make sense in the sense that there's a process involved to qualify all this affordable housing.
Right.
As deed restricted, so.
Yep.
I would like to see us take ownership of them all and lease them and have the income.
I agree with that.
That's what I would like.
Yep.
And I think, to get it back to us where it started, people would be like, yay us. It's another feel good. People feel empowered by that. I think if we can do that, that's my recommendation.
Thanks. I heard John concur there. And yeah, Karen, and I think that's part of the backdrop for my suggestion that we let the McCulloch open space thing play out a little bit, because my sense is we're going to answer some of the questions that we would have to answer if the property was to transfer from Hope to the town. We're going to have to resolve some of the same stuff to make the McCulloch thing work. So it might facilitate that kind of proposal.
It'd be nice to have all the details worked out before. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and could give it some momentum.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So this will stay on the updates for another month at least. Any other thoughts on that? Okay.
I'm good to let it sit and play out.
Very good. I like another area where maybe we have an opportunity for some convergence, which is good. Okay, ARPA proposal. Where we left that was looking for opportunities and going after some information on how Norwich in particular and other towns might be approaching this. The backstory is that ARPA funds cannot be used for new development according to state guidelines, but can be used for redevelopment. And we're looking at the possible opportunity to put a proposal forward for the ARPA funds that Old Lyme will be receiving, which are going to be about $1.2 million, if I understand correctly. Since we last spoke, the ARPA committee has begun meeting. It's had one meeting, and I think there's another one coming up this week. So there is a place to send a proposal if we're able to come up with one. I had an action item to look back through some of the previous work that was done by the town around the blight ordinance and other thinking in the town to see if there were any known opportunities for redevelopment that had presented themselves. And so far, I've come up dry on that. That there aren't any known. It was more of a conceptual work. I'm going to keep digging, but so far, nothing specific. But Jen, anything from what you've been pursuing?
Yeah, so John Solomon is haven't been able to connect. We're in the search for a new executive director right now for Habitat, but the 2 million that Norwich gave to us is working with us on collaboration on fixing up these properties that have been blighted, et cetera, that the city of Norwich has foreclosed on and taken over. So it's not just a blighted area, it's something that's a legal process that has already gone through the ringer, if you will. And they now own the properties, so they are in the capacity to legally, bring us in and spend the money on them. So it's a little different than just saying, oh, like 156, this gas station is blight, so we want to buy it and then redevelop it for affordable housing. So it's a little bit different situation. But I think it generates ideas, right? So that it generates us some ideas on redevelopment and even in-home redevelopment where we want to have people that require affordable housing stay in place or stay in their home and that kind of thing. So maybe we can think about different ways that we could develop that. But the first step, I think, would be maybe we could collaborate somehow, either share a person from this team on their team as far as the ARPA. Is it a commission, a team, a committee right now? I think it's a committee right now.
Yes, appointed committee.
Committee, yeah. And, just to stay abreast of what they're, thinking and that they understand what our angle is. I'm sure there's other things besides housing that ARPA can be used for. So housing can't be the only thing that ARPA is used for. So there may be other angles that they're pursuing that we're not aware of. And if we make our needs known to them from an affordable housing standpoint, perhaps, that's the piece of the pie that they need to know about.
That's a good thought, John. Would you suggest either trying to get on the agenda or sending them a memo just to let them know what we're thinking about? And
Sure, I could do that.
Or we could maybe get on the agenda and just go have a chat with them too, which,
Yeah, if they're meeting once every other week, if it sounds like at the start anyways, yeah, I would be happy to do that. Yeah.
so, tell you what, I'll send a note to the chairman and ask if we can get a few minutes on one of their future agendas, and not too distant future.
Who is the chairman of that, by the way?
So I said that, I knew you were going to ask that, and I forget. But
I tried to Google it before this topic came up and I couldn't find it.
it's in the Board of Selectmen minutes from
I knew it was in there somewhere, but I couldn't find it. All right, I'll find it, don't worry. But yeah, I think, I mean, it's in our best interest. I mean, but obviously overlap, in concentric circles like this with ARPA funds. And so, other towns are already doing it, and we might be a little bit behind some other towns that have already had like a vision in place for this. I think that maybe it was a bit unexpected for Old Lyme to get this amount of money, but I mean, in my personal opinion, it was unexpected for me for Old Lyme to get this amount of money from ARPA. But we'll see what we can do with it. I mean, we want to maximize the value of it for the residents and attracting other residents here. So
absolutely. And I'd hope maybe we could come with something more concrete if there were known opportunities, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So we're going to have to go with something conceptual, at least and I agree with you, Jenna, to at least get that in their thinking.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have a specific proposal yet, it's probably a good idea.
Okay.
Other thoughts?
Sounds like a good sound idea. At least find out what they're thinking.
Okay, so I will take an action to send a note to the chairman of the ARPA committee and ask for a couple of minutes on their agenda just to explore this further with them. Good. Okay, so that covers the updates. I'll move to other business or any matters arising. I have one, just an FYI. So in regards to the Halls Road Village District conversation that's going on, which has been very interesting. It's gone public hearing was started with zoning and is continuing on through planning. So it's going to be going on for a little while. Two things about that. So one is that there are some provisions related to affordable housing in the suggested zoning changes. One is actually an ability to increase some of the density of housing of the residential housing if it is qualified as affordable. So that's a good thing. And the other, from a more general perspective, is that it's kind of a real-time lesson in how the zoning regulation change process goes. And I've been looking at it through that lens too. So we can see, I expect that as part of our recommendations and the plan that we come up with over the coming months is going to have some recommendations for zoning regulation changes in it. So it's been interesting to watch that play out and maybe helpful for us to help with our planning. So if you have the opportunity to either read the minutes or look in on the hearings, it's been a learning process for me, and I think it would be something good to have in our, if not our direct experience in observing what Holes Road is going through to get those zoning changes implemented.
Yeah, I missed the part where it was changing the density if only it was qualified as affordable. Is
Right.
that was a stipulation? Okay.
Hey, Mike, in the Economic Development Committee notes from our last meeting, Tom Gatalka was the chair for the American Rescue Funds group. I don't know whether that's accurate or not, but it's in the Economic
Yeah,
Development.
that's not the name I have in my head. I know Tom was added to it, but
Well, that's just in their notes. So it's not,
Okay.
take it from,
I saw it clearly identified in the selectmen's notes, in the selectmen's minutes. I can't remember which meeting, but it was, I think it was at some point last month. Okay, any other business that we need to engage this evening?
No.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So that brings us to upcoming meetings. So we have a regular meeting scheduled in November, the third week in November. I can't remember what the exact date is. So again, I expect that'll have our usual housekeeping updates. And I think the planning session we had just before this meeting was really useful if it was a little cramped for time. So I'd be interested in your thoughts about tacking on, doing the same thing we did this evening next month and putting a special meeting up in front of or behind the regular meeting. And that does two things. It lets us extend the meeting some, and it also kind of protects that agenda item. So it gets a dedicated time slot and doesn't get overrun by some of the other business we'll be tackling or
Yeah,
anything.
that's November 17th is that Wednesday.
Yep.
And I'd be in favor of before the meeting rather than after the meeting. So more of a 5 o'clock special versus a subject to be determined 7 o'clock, I guess,
Right.
special meeting.
Would have, instead of a 5, we ran short. We could have gone on a little bit longer productively, I think, in the hour we spent before this meeting started. Would a 4:30 start be feasible for folks? Especially those of us who are not retired?
I could not do a 4:30 on a Wednesday, but I could do 5.
Okay.
I'm the same. I could do a 5, but not a 4:30.
Okay. I'm not a bit surprised to hear that. All right. So at minimum, then we'll schedule a 5 o'clock.
What we could do, Michael, maybe you and I could get together and just make a more specific outcome for the 5 o'clock meeting from
Yeah.
that strategy standpoint and share it with the group ahead of time. And then we could just have maybe more of a stepwise actionable thing. Like we agree with this, we don't agree with this. This is what we're going with. This is what, that kind of thing. So because remember, we're also going to be getting those RFPs in that time frame. And so there's going to be other things that are added to our regular agenda as well.
Yeah. I think we're going to, well, if backing up to the RFP cadence, if the RFP goes out on, say, the 22nd, we're going to need to, well, actually, we're going to need to schedule a special meeting for the public opening of the sealed RFPs. And that'll probably be in the first week of November. That'll be a short meeting. And we're probably also going to need a special meeting to review the proposals and go through the selection process. So November is going to be busy up through Thanksgiving. So yeah, I think we'll schedule a 5 o'clock special prior to our 6 o'clock regular on November 17th. The other advantage of scheduling a special meeting adjacent to the regular meeting is it means we don't have to cancel the regular meeting that's already been scheduled and on the calendar for the 17th, and we can just extend it back to the 5 o'clock hour by tacking on a special and posting that. So we'll do that. And to your point, Jen, yeah, I think we got a good start, I think, in the hour we spent in the 5 o'clock hour this evening. And so we have, if we're good with that three-pronged approach and at least some of the forces that worked and the responses in what our strategy would look like, then we can take that through another step and have a productive hour. So good. So we'll have the special meeting at 5 o'clock on the 17th. Depending on when the posting goes, I'll stay in touch with you about scheduling special meetings to open the proposals and go through the consultant proposals and go through a selection process and keep that moving. So it looks like there'll be two special meetings in November to keep that going. Hopefully, well, the one on the 17th will be limited to an hour. We'll go from 5 to 6, and the opening will be really quick. I think we'll need a minimal quorum to do that, to do the opening, and then we'll schedule one with.
What is that when you say opening? What does that mean exactly?
So the proposals are going to come in sealed.
Right.
So my understanding of the process that we're going through is that there will be a public opening of the bids and announcement of who proposed and what the bids were for.
Okay. So if it's going out Friday, the 22nd, so 3 weeks, we'll put it at November 12th.
Yep, and we may want to go another week, and
So that would be after our 17th meeting.
Yep.
Okay, I got you. All right.
Yep. But we'll look at what when this actually, it hasn't been posted yet. I'm hopeful it's going to go this week, but we'll work forward from that date.
Michael, when we get the proposals back, do we have to bid level them in a meeting? Because you may want to think about that, or a special meeting.
We need to do what, John?
Bid level. In other words, review the proposals to make sure they're all apples to apples from what we're looking for.
Yeah, so that's why I think there's a public opening where the bids are just open, and then the sealed bids then become public, and we can talk about them.
Well, you open the bid and you say so-and-so company is
Right.
10,000, 10,000, whatever. Which
Right.
they'll all be the same amount, but then there'll be a bid leveling of what do we get for the 10,000? Because
Exactly, and that's why I think we might need two special meetings. One is for the opening,
Yeah.
and then we can distribute the materials and think about them, and then come together to discuss them to do the bid leveling as you discussed, as you just.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So that's why I think the RFP process is going to take two special meetings, one quick one to do the opening, and then another longer one to actually discuss and go through the selection.
Now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so as if that's different from the last couple of months, November is going to be a busy month for us too. Okay, anything else we need to think about? So the moving the RFP along and the consultant engagement, our old business that we just went through in updates, and continuing our planning deliberations will all be happening in November. I hope I didn't miss anything, but did we? Did I?
Miss Thanksgiving.
We will not be meeting on Thanksgiving.
That's a good one.
It all sounds good. Got to do what we got to do.
Thanks. And I really do appreciate it. We are working hard, and appreciate it very much.
Well, you're getting us all in line, so that's a big help.
Okay, so if that covers item 6, I will open up for public comment. I don't see, we might have someone dial in that might want to comment, but I'll open that up the session now. If there's someone out there who would like to comment, please state your name and try to keep it to a couple of minutes.
Kate, you must have some comment. Oh.
Okay, hearing none. I think that covers it, and I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
John? Second?
I'll second.
Karen? Any discussion? Actually, this isn't directly related much, but I've learned that the chairman can adjourn a meeting without going through this once the agenda is complete. I don't intend to do that, just to leave an opportunity at the end for someone to have a discussion. But that learning curve has a lot of.
Don't you think?
Say,
Sounds like a power grab to me. I don't know.
yeah, I don't intend to avail myself of it. Then
It's like, shut up, all you people.
the learning curve has a lot of angles.
Very good.
Okay.
No discussion.
Well, no discussion. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
One point of order.
Oh,
The October 6 minutes of the American Recovery Act funding, or whatever they call their committee, was chaired by Tom Gatauka. However, Richard Stout wrote
That's the name.
is
Yep.
is writing the mission statement, but he did sign as chairperson. So at least that's as accurate as you get right now.
Okay.
Might need some clarity on that, but I third the motion to adjourn.
nice, George.
Okay, I think we had a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone's in favor.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned, and
You guys.
I'll stay in touch regarding special meetings, but barring anything else, we'll be together next on November 17th at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening. Thanks.
Great day, you guys. Bye.
See you.